Good afternoon. It's great to have you all here. This panel represents an elite group of entrepreneurs and founders, for-profits and not-for-profits, who truly serve what we call at GSV, the pre-K to grade continuum of learning and skills. And these founders uniquely serve lower income groups at scale in India. So what I'd love each of you to kind of go down the line and describe in your mission. I mean, arguably version 1.0 of EdTech in India was really aimed at the top 10, 20%, however you want to characterize it, in terms of the wealth concentration of population for all obvious reasons. I mean, it's obviously it's an easier market to tap into if you're trying to monetize. You all are really the vanguard of the first wave, in my view, of democratization of EdTech. The opportunity for EdTech learning and skills to be democratized in India is, when you multiply the numbers out, quite profound. So it'd be great. Each of you just kind of, Utsav, we'll start with you. Just describe what you all are doing at Rocket and how you're, because that's early. Start with early childhood, and then it kind of moves on down the line. But and how you think about impact and scale, and how EdTech, you're a not-for-profit, but how EdTech is changing in the India market to really address that vast population beneath the top 10 or 20%.
Sure, thanks, Deborah. So I run Rocket Learning, a non-profit EdTech organization which focuses on early childhood education of low-income children in India. Our mission is to ensure that every single child in the country, and there are over 50 million such children who don't get good quality education today, who are underprepared for school, and the gap that they have when they enter school just keeps widening over the years. So our focus is essentially to ensure that every single child is ready for school and consequently ready for life. We leverage technology in a big way to make sure that there's proper education happening in daycare centers in the country where education is practically non-existent today. Combined with that, we also enable parents at home to be more engaged with their children. So we try to get schools and homes closer together to ensure there's a strong continuum of learning between the two.
And Ashish is actually, you're fixing a dysfunctional part of the higher education system. So talk to that and the impact that can have.
Absolutely. So I'm Ashish. We run a company named Sunstone. Basically, what we do is that we work with the higher education institution in the country, but there is a certain twist to that. We ensure that we are not targeting the top 15% of the market, and we work in the next 85% market, or what we call rest 85% market. And that's where the real problem lies. When we talk about the number of students graduating, less than 40% have the right skill set to work in any kind of job, and that's primarily in the segment in which we operate. So we started with a mission of creating accountability in this segment. We started with the MBA programs, and now we are diversifying into a lot of UG programs as well. But the focus and the core remains the segment that which we are operating in, the next 85% segment. And there's a lot of overlap between what we do to the affordable education segment, because whosoever can afford can go into the top 15%. So it's primarily the affordable, the next 85% segment that we operate in.
Jigyasa, you want to talk about your work in the K-12 segment?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Jigyasa, and I run a nonprofit called Slam Out Loud. I come from a country where our ambitions for children who come from low-income communities are either about getting a job or, at best, academic success. But we believe that children, no matter what background they come from, should get safe spaces to express, to find their own voice. And if you look at the global research around how artistic education enables children to do that, there is all proof that it enables children to build social-emotional learning, 21st century skills. However, our ratio of art teachers to number of students in government schools is about 1:1,400, which means less than 20 hours of art-based education for children who go to public schools. For rural areas, this number is 0. So our organization, Slam Out Loud, brings art and artistic opportunities to children from low-income backgrounds by placing artists into classrooms or creating e-learning products like lesson plans, guidelines that teachers can use to bring artistic learning for social-emotional learning to their children. We reach about 5 million children, and we hope that existing art periods in schools can become places where children can express, learn about issues of gender, climate action using the arts, and more importantly, find their voice.
Great. Smita, you and Ashish really both provide technology solutions to fix site-based issues. And so, yeah, come at it from what you all are doing in the K-12 market. And we're full disclosure, GSV Ventures is an investor in Lead Schools, so obviously a big fan. So, yeah.
I think, see, anyone who's looked at the India market knows two things as facts, right? One is that it is the single largest K-12 market with 260 million children. Would be the fifth largest country had, if these kids were a country by themselves, right? So it's a really, really large market. And there is enough data that now shows that there is massive learning gap. Pratham has published multiple reports over years to show that grade 5 students, almost 50% of grade 5 students can't do grade 3 math. They can't do grade 3, reading. So we know that there is a deep problem, and it's a large and a deep problem. So the way we looked at it was, how can we solve this problem and democratize high quality education? How do we take kids from learning gaps to mastery? And our way of doing it is to basically transform schools. So what we do at LEAD is we provide an integrated learning system to schools, which integrates high quality curriculum with a system that changes the behaviors of teachers and the school staff in schools and takes students to mastery. On an average, now for many years, we've seen that students who come onto the LEAD platform have anywhere close to 45 to 50% mastery, and in one academic year, we're able to take them above 70%. So that's what we're doing, and essentially the last few years has been about scaling the solution because we're seeing such fantastic outcomes, and we want to take it to more and more students so that they're able to really have a much better future. So yeah, that's what's been our journey.
And Nirmit, you've used sort of the job platform as a Trojan horse in the long run for skilling, and you're effectively dealing with the population that is coming out of a broken downstream systems. So talk about that, talk about the network effects that you've achieved so far, and how you see the rollout of your upskilling, reskilling across your platform.
So the goal of Apna is to help to connect people to opportunities. And we do this by doing three things: helping people build digital professional identity. And many of our users are first-time internet users. Helping them find the best hyperlocal jobs and opportunities. And thirdly, helping them find their own tribe and network of people so that they can kind of connect with, learn from each other. In terms of users, we have north of 20 million users today, and we have 300,000 plus recruiters. So the network effects are kicking in very strongly. And in terms of jobs and skilling, so I think so you use the word Trojan horse very nicely. So let me explain. Our perspective is that in terms of, we believe that when I went undercover and spent more time with our users, majority of our users don't have luxury to go for a full-fledged education program because they are very much hand-to-mouth. Secondly, we know smaller SKUs of skilling will be much easily consumed by these users. Thirdly, a lot of times when user applies to a job but fail an interview, they have nothing to do and they feel very dejected. At that point of time, we want to kind of step in, help them upskill on that particular skill set which is missing, and basically make them ready for the next job. And the reason why this thing can work at a very low SKU is because Apna becomes a negative CAC business. The biggest challenge with many educational companies is the customer acquisition cost is so high.
Right.
For you to even make it profitable and sustainable, you have to charge high money, which our users cannot afford. So we make money through hiring. But when users fail the interview, that is point of time we can do $1, $0.50 courses, and people can learn. So that's the idea.
Yeah, CAC is a big issue in the B2C market in India. That is absolutely sure. A tension that we see here in the U.S. quite frequently, particularly when you're addressing the underserved population, is the tension. This will go to Ashish and Smita and Nirmit, is the tension between purpose and profit. So if you guys can talk a little bit about how you balance that, and appreciate that you don't have profits yet, but minor detail, but you will. So I'm just curious how you build, as you're building the company, how you work on the culture and all that sort of thing to maintain that important balance. Smita, you want to go first?
Sure, I can go first. So, see, I think India is, poses a unique opportunity, especially in education. When I look at K-12, 50% of students in India go to private schools. And unlike most of the developed countries, private schools are not for the privileged. In India, private schools are for everyone. Any parent who has any disposable income, their first aspiration is to send their child, take the kid out of a government school and put them in a private school, which is an English medium school. So here you have parents who are paying, who want very high outcomes or who aspire for high outcomes, but unfortunately the old practices have not given them the high outcomes. So I think it's a unique opportunity to match purpose and profit. I think the fact that we choose to work in this segment, for us comes from purpose. We have chosen not to work with high fee schools. I get asked that question very often, internally and externally. I always answer it with one, why do we even exist? We didn't need to do this if we had to work with high fee schools. But the other is also from a commercial angle. I always talk about the market. I mean, there are 140 million students going to private schools. Only 10 million go to these high fee schools. So even when I look at the market size, I think, it just makes a lot of sense for us to be working with affordable and low fee schools. So that's how we bring purpose and profits. I know we don't make EBITDA profits, but we make very good contribution margins,
Yes, you do.
and you're aware of that. And I think, just to answer your question on culture, I think it's about where do you innovate, and the conversations that we have internally is how can you, how do you benchmark to global standards and outcomes, but then deliver it at really, really low cost. And that's where innovation lies, and the most recent example I'll use is, and many of my friends here are from India, and what I might say is might be a little controversial, so I don't mean to be rude, but for example, coding skills are core life skills now. I recall paying 60,000 Indian rupees just for a coding program after school for my kid. LEAD offers a coding and computational skills program at 150 rupees to all our students in schools. That's $2. It takes them to the same outcomes. I remember 2 years back when I told the team, this is the budget, because we have to replace that textbook of computer science. They thought I was crazy. And I was like, that's what we are here for. This is what we need to innovate on. And if we can't do it, then why are we here? We'll just be like the others. So I think it's important to set that, have that clarity of purpose, both from the point of view of why you exist, but also how you're going to make money. So on the 150 rupees, well, we do make our margin too, and it just required us to innovate, think out of the box and innovate. So yeah, that's how we've been trying to solve this.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's wonderful. And Smita has the other wonderful benefit of being actually married to her co-founder. So it's they have to have a lot of.
That doesn't save us much money, but.
Ashish, you want to comment on?
Yeah. So the way we look at Sunstone is that actually purpose and profit can be aligned, and then they can go hand in hand. And the reason is primarily, as Smita was also mentioning, the market is so large in the segment in which we are operating. We don't have to truly worry about the profits, like whether we will make profits or not make profits. We truly believe that if we are giving a good product to the market, we definitely will end up creating a lot of profits. Secondly, the problem that we feel that why this question comes up, why at the outside it looks that there can be a challenge, is that because currently the people who are running education, they are thinking it primarily from a very short-term point of view, where if you have to make profit, you can only make profit by cutting corners, by not providing good tech tools, learning outcomes, pedagogy, curriculum to the students. And this is where technology and the scale comes in, wherein if you can create something phenomenal at the central, create best of the curriculum, pedagogy, learning outcomes, LMSs, tech tools for student, and then you have the internet's distribution available to you. And that's the reason that Smita is saying that she is available to deliver the coding courses at $2. We are able to deliver this outcomes for our student at a very, very low price, and that's where truly the power of internet comes in.
Perfect. Nirmit? Wow.
So we fundamentally believe that if you follow the mission and you create true outcome for the user, money will most likely follow. But this will only work, right, if the entire company kind of buys into the culture. I think so the perspective of culture you put in is very interesting, because that framework, everybody, your product manager to your engineering manager, has to kind of buy into that. Like Smita's example that they wanted to innovate at a $2 course. So totally agree with that. And so for Apna, when COVID had hit, and at that point of time, a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly in say logistics and companies in logistics as well as healthcare, were like really struggling to hire workers. And we were like one of the only source for them to acquire candidates. And there was there was a great way to make money, because you can go and exploit this situation. But at that point of time, we had a quick meeting with a monetization pod where the product manager and the business manager took the decision that this is a time to accelerate India. Let's not go and make money at this point. We will have 1,000 chances to make money. And that did help us well, because what happened is that created such a positive goodwill in the recruiter side that finally we had like our recruiter retention and our recruiter referral rate increased by almost 40-50x. And that allowed us to finally save the growth budgets. So finally, I think so if you do the right things, money starts flowing back. Yes.
Yeah, we say that high ROE, which is return on education, not return on equity, equals a high IRR. So the higher it is very possible for financial returns and impact to be inextricably linked in our view. Jigyasa and Utsav, why don't you guys talk to, because you are not structured as not-for-profits, talk to the importance of sort of public-private partnerships within the education sector in India. We have that dynamic here as well, and I think sometimes there's tension, sometimes there's great cohabitation. Love to hear also how you all think as philanthropically funded organizations, how you think about sustainability and long-term funding so that you can maximize your impact. So just love it, Rocket and Slam Out Loud. So you want to start?
Sure.
So, yep.
So we serve the bottom 50% of the population today, who go to government schools. And government school, unlike in the US, the government school system in India is fairly broken. The preschool education system in India is non-existent, which is why we believe in the power of government for three reasons essentially. One, we can access, if we want to impact the bottom 50% of the population, the bottom 50% of the population goes to government schools. These schools are free of cost. So one, there is huge access. Two, the power of government is really strong. We almost white label our services for the government. And instead of let's say a private organization going and selling something to them, is the government going and telling them that this is a service that you must buy or that you can get for the benefit of your children. So the power of government is extremely strong. People listen to the government. And the third is, just from a scale perspective, because the problem is so large that the government gives you instant access to a very wide population. So I think these were the three reasons why we decided to partner with the government. I think, of course, sustainability is always a question. And the way we see it is, one, that, for the sort of next 2 to 3 years, we do see ourselves sustaining on philanthropic capital. We do have a couple of governments paying us for our services already. So we do see a lot more of that in the coming years. And I think sustainability is also important from the point of view of continuing your work with the governments, with the existing governments. And I think the sort of trick to that is just building very deep relationships with the existing government networks and showing them that there is political capital in this, right? The moment you have so we work with about 1 million children and parents. You have 1 million parents who are believing that the government is helping you in terms of education. And the moment the government sees strong political capital, they are equally invested. And I think that's a virtuous cycle that you want to start then.
Thanks, Utsav. I think I just want to build on that. The era of organizations running parallel systems almost seem to be over. And that is because if you want to create a parallel system, you have to grow really, really large in size to be able to create an impact. However, when you partner with government systems, they give you that access that allows you as an organization to stay small while the impact can be really large. And I think so a choice that organizations and entrepreneurs now have is whether they want to grow the idea that they have, grow the vision that they have, or whether they want to grow their organization to a mammoth size. And the government provides that opportunity to scale your idea without scaling your organization. So I think public-private partnerships are inevitable if we want to work at scale within the K-12 sector. Now coming to like sustainable partnerships, I also think that there are different ideas in the education sector which have already been sold as dreams. So foundational literacy, numeracy is already sold as a dream. And I believe that the space that we work in, which is socio-emotional learning, it's still an area which is thought of as good to have and not a must-have. And before it turns into an idea which is naturally seen as a must-have for every child, we will need philanthropic capital to advocate around the idea itself. So for Slam Out Loud, I also see us being funded by philanthropy, but also creating revenue-generating streams. For example, 20% of our funds come from collaborating with other organizations that want us to create curriculum. For example, curriculum about how might we bring gender into classrooms using the art, or how might we bring climate action into classrooms using the arts, and they fund us to create that curriculum. And that allows us to create like a different revenue stream. But I think until that time comes where this is normalized, there needs to be philanthropic capital.
Yeah. Can you guys talk about impediments to serving the underserved populations in India? I mean, whether it's vernacular, the massive number of vernacular languages that exist across the Indian continent, or the digital divide, obviously, and how you think about, I mean, all of you have workarounds, and what you think is going to happen down the road, and what opportunities that may bring as you begin to have digital penetration, things like that. So you want to start?
Yeah. So one thing which has really happened well as a interesting tailwind in India is the smartphone and internet penetration has really increased significantly over the last couple of years, particularly in this segment because data is now very cheap.
Right.
And what has that done is that has helped us, and a lot of innovation has kind of got fostered because of that inflection point, that we can now serve the right product to the right people in a very easy way. So that has definitely helped us solve this thing. Around, like I can give an example around language on the cultural divide standpoint. So at Apna, when we introduced Apna, and which is a very, actually, I would say, irrational insight. When we introduced Apna, like the first easiest way was, let's go and build a vernacular product because that's what we think of. But as we spent more time with our user base, we realized that a lot of people in India were aspirational about English. So the way we innovated on languages is we combined English with Hindi. If you are in, say, Delhi, you see our app in English. But if you are in, say, Gujarat, you combine Gujarati and English and you see your app in like Thodu English. So we combined it with different things. So we see a lot of startups innovating in terms of with their old cultural nuances and getting out.
Great. Smita, you want to?
Yeah. See, I think, in fact, I wouldn't think of technology causing any divide. In fact, I think, there's very, very high penetration of mobile phones. Children have access to that. They're using, we did a survey and we realized 85% of kids were using their parents' mobile phone at home, at least for an hour a day. And
multiple kids were sharing it.
Yeah,
too,
and
right?
multiple kids are sharing. And in fact, many households have a mobile phone, which is a shared device, which all the kids of the household can use. In K-12, and even language is not really a barrier because, there's a lot of innovative stuff that you can do with content that makes it accessible, whether you make it extremely visual or whether you make it bilingual. In K-12, we felt that, or at least what we've seen is that the two large impediments are, one is affordability, because most of the solutions that are out there are really expensive. And I speak for a school owner because I was a school owner, and what we built was out of compulsion. I was not looking at building a product company. I had to do it because I just could not buy good curriculum and good technology that was affordable, and that made my business model work. So I think affordability is a big impediment. Even if I look at how the government spends, surprisingly significantly higher than what low-fee schools and affordable schools spend per child. Like, it is at least 4x of what we spend in private schools, but government schools deliver significantly lower outcomes. So, I think that is where a lot of innovation is needed, where you can bring very high quality stuff. You can keep the bar high on outcomes, but then make it extremely affordable, for people. The second impediment really, which prohibits you from delivering at scale, is teacher capability.
Yep.
Teacher capability at scale is very, very poor in India, and it comes from the legacy Bachelor of Education program, which hasn't seen any innovation in the last 40 years. And I think that's where a lot of work is needed. And what we learned very early in our journey is that teacher training actually just does not translate into change in behavior in the classroom. 10% of teachers are able to implement what they learn in a training program and translate it into classroom action. Systems actually change behavior. If you implement a system in a school which is telling the teacher what to do, and she follows it, then, voila, like there's this immediate change. Every class changes, and that's how you can sort of start raising the bar. I was hearing Dan earlier yesterday from Stanford, and he said, practice makes permanent. And if we can get all teachers to practice what some of the best teachers in the world do, well, then, student outcomes in that classroom will go up. And that's what we've been trying to do. And I think even in the government, and I have a very different experience from my friends here. I've tried twice to work with the government. It's tough, man. It's really tough. Hats off to you guys. I've given up twice, though I'm trying to do that back again. But I think those are the two big impediments. For any of us who are looking at doing something meaningful in India, you've got to make it extremely affordable, and you've got to figure out how do you, this big number of teachers that we already have in the profession who have low skill. How do you get them to do things that high skill teachers would do in the classroom? Without going through the training route, because that just doesn't work.
Yeah, it is fascinating. It's almost like we're lazy here. In America, we're so, the digital divide is all about, Google won't like hearing this, but every child having a Chromebook, right? It's so fascinating to see companies in India who are totally innovating on phones, and of course, phone penetration here is high too. So it is an interesting contrast. Utsav, were you jumping in there?
Yeah, sure. I agree with a lot of what Smita said, and I know it's not easy working with the government. It's true. I do think that when we talk about digital penetration, over the last couple of years, what it has also led to is the last couple of years have been extremely difficult for a lot of low-income segments, and we need to be conscious of that. So while smartphone penetration is extremely high, the data packs on the phones are non-existent, right? So it's almost redundant, the fact that they have it. I think the solution that needs to be delivered, especially in government, it's true that the kind of spending in each government school on each child is a lot higher than in private schools. I think we really need to sort of look at solutions which solve for cost in a big way. I think every single solution, which goes out to low-income populations need to be, extremely low on cost. It needs to be, solved for, data issues. And I also believe that it needs to be a hybrid in some sense. I think, while we look at digital in a very big way, we absolutely cannot ignore, the physical element of anything that we do. So, much like how Lee does it, it's obviously a physical model combined with a digital model. I do think a hybrid is sort of the way to go. Yeah.
Ashish, I think you've got similar training issues with faculty in that segment of higher ed, right? And how do you all deal with that at this point?
Yeah. So for us, we think of ourselves as a sort of a Intel inside in a campus. So each and everything is defined to the T. And as Smita said, the teacher training is obviously, it's not the 100% of the task, and a lot of things has to be done before you go to the teacher training part and modules. So let's say when we talk about even a single individual lecture, when a teacher is taking, there are approximately 8 to 9 handouts that are created, which is does not only include what teacher has to supposed to be teaching in the class. It has to be talk about what you will be talking, what video you will be playing at what minute. So everything to the T has to be defined. And one thing which we have find which work wonderfully is that you have to ensure that you are reducing teachers' work as much as possible. When it comes to assessment, when it comes to evaluating students, when it comes to giving them homework or something, you have to ensure that you minimize teacher work, and that's when they start using your tools.
It's always a trick. Always a trick. Make teachers' lives easier, and suddenly things open up. Jigyasa, you have a comment on that one too?
Yes. When I think of impediments, I also do think about power and the power play that exists between governments, organizations, other stakeholders, children, and how that power is shared among different people. Are organizations that work in education and serve the underserved really listening to the children that they serve? Are they catering to their needs? What is the power play between a funder and the one who's funded? Who dictates terms and who decides what goes into classrooms? I think another one is designing for diversity. While diversity is such a feature, how many organizations do take that into account as a strength and an opportunity to partner with organizations on the ground? And the last one is, I think, just collaboration. Education, especially inequity, is such a wicked problem that I don't think one organization can solve. And how many spaces exist for organizations to really collaborate so that a child can receive multiple solutions at the same time with organizations that are not working in silos but care about really working together. And yeah, Smita, third time's a charm. So you might want to. I have not given up. I agree with you.
Next year, you can come back and talk about your enormous government business. It'll be great. Next year, you can come back and talk about your enormous government business. It'll be perfect. We're down to the final time here. I want to talk about my partner, Michael Moe, sort of coined a term back in March of 2020 when we first hit the pandemic of BC to AD, the dawn of the age of digital learning, and before Corona to after disease was BC to AD. And it was interesting. I was talking to Smita yesterday, and we were talking about some of the pressures that the U.S. K-12 systems are seeing around mental, with children having very severe mental health pressures. Teachers the same. And it was fascinating because it really, Smita's reaction was we're not seeing that actually. So I'd just love each of you guys to comment on BC to AD, what the impact that it had on your business, what you see or your organization, and kind of how you see it. Because I think with 5,700 people here at ASU+GSV, I think we actually are AD at this point, and maybe not AD, but we're acting like we're AD, and so just love to have you all each comment on kind of what that meant, positive and negative, and what changes it's driving going forward. Go ahead. Yeah.
So I still remember March 2020.
Oh yeah.
It was dark, uncertain, and a lot of chaos, right? So given like unemployment rate for most of our segment was around at 30-40%. Hotel industry was laying off. Drivers were getting laid off. And Apna, we were a 3-month-old company at that point of time. And assume being a jobs company where your jobs are down by 90%, it's an existential crisis. So we had 30,000 users at that point of time. We basically, the first thing we did is let's go and talk to every user. So in the next 72 hours, we actually talked to every single user.
Wow.
Tried to understand the situation, understand how can we help, and just give them comfort that we don't know what is the solution. We don't know how the world is going to go. We will help you find a job. Just stick with us. That's what we did. And couple of weeks later, we saw a bunch of jobs coming back. I think so logistics and healthcare leading the way. Work from home jobs started coming back, and jobs basically at the end of the year we are at 10x jobs. So for me, like the two, I would say, silver linings of what happened during this is when a bunch of folks from hotel industry and all lost jobs, what we saw that folks from healthcare industry were doing peer-to-peer upskilling of them on their own. There is no tutor in the middle. So like say a ward boy is teaching a office boy how to go and, give an injection and all those pieces. And for me, that is humanity, right? That is what humanity is all about.
Yep.
That's that. And so I called my mom, and at that point of time, I said, "Mom, humanity is alive."
That's great. That's great.
And the second silver lining is we also saw a very significant rise of work from home jobs.
Right.
Now, work from home jobs existed for white collar segment, but for blue and gray collar segment, nobody trusted them for a work from home job. And we saw that rising. And what that did is, in Apna, the number of women applying to jobs has increased by 50%. Because a lot of times, housewives now have 2, 3, 5 hours. They can work as a telecaller. They can do some business development work. And that is actually also, solving a lot in terms of women empowerment. And also, for me, I think so those are two
Amazing.
very interesting silver linings.
That's amazing, actually. Smita, you?
Yeah, so I think during COVID, I would talk about two trends that we saw. One was good and one not. The good one is that in schools, particularly, there was a lot of inertia to move to systems, to move to technology. In fact, I always found it fascinating that even the small retail shops and the kirana stores in India had become tech-enabled, but schools were still running in an analog manner. The principal would walk into the classroom to know what's going on, whereas she didn't need to. So I think what has happened is COVID has definitely raised the awareness of moving away from textbook learning to multimodal learning, to blended formats, both amongst schools and amongst parents. And that's great because I think it basically will uplift everyone, and it allows for a lot of curriculum innovation to come in. So I think that's been great for us and for I think everyone. One challenge, of course, and we are talking more about it tomorrow. Another panel is about the learning loss. I mean, we've definitely seen learning loss. I think the students that we work with were anyways a couple of years behind on an average. And what we've seen is that they've, again, taken a further step back. Now, wherever we work with schools, because we are designed for this upliftment, they found it easier. But now in India, schools opened for the first time in the month of February, and every single classroom that I've visited, I'm seeing kids struggle with reading. I'm seeing kids struggle with math. They have not written for a long time. So I think it is, for us, in fact, there were new product features that we were going to launch. We held them back, and we've actually, within the organization, stated that it is going to be back to basics this academic year. We're back to foundational literacy and numeracy skills. We're back to helping teachers remember how to run physical classes. They've forgotten their routines. They've forgotten how to manage classrooms. So it is back to basics. And I think it has set us back by, set schools
sure.
back by 6
Us
months to a year. And we'll have to move forward from there.
Yeah, no, it's devastating in the U.S. All right, we're down to seconds, but you each get 15. Jigyasa, you have...
That's completely fine. I think our work during COVID grew because the conversation about mental health and social-emotional learning outcomes for children became a real conversation. And we were using the arts for the children to process the pandemic, think about like what is the experience they're going through. And my hope is that that continues when children are back in schools. Unfortunately, we're now like learning loss and let's focus on academics. But I hope we will divide that attention.
So I'll quickly talk about, definitely with COVID, when COVID hit, students didn't know what to do, faculties were not ready, colleges were not ready, and obviously a lot of parents lost jobs. And then you started putting a lot of tech into the colleges and everything. But the silver lining that I see because of this is that now at least people are open to bringing a lot of tech in the colleges. And the bare access was never a problem in India. We have 50,000 colleges spread across the country. But now people are open to putting tech, people are open to talking about how we can create a platform where student can really learn. So that's a silver lining that I would take away from COVID.
All right, Utsav, I think I have to get 2 seconds.
I know we're short of time. We've exceeded time. I'll make it really quick. So there is no doubt that there's been huge learning loss. We all know that. People often talk about generational loss of learning. I actually believe slightly differently here. I do think these 2 years has caused a generational shift in terms of pedagogy, in terms of teacher training, in terms of how schools are run, in terms of how parents are involved in the learning. I think this shift actually augurs us really well for generations to come. So I do think there's a strong silver lining for future generations.
And with that, note of optimism.